Racial justice protests continue across the United States. And France says its forces have killed North African Al-Qaeda leader Abdelmalek Drukdel. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe, also lined up this hour. As WFP warns of acute hunger crisis, we'll look at the impact of COVID-19 on food security in Africa. And in sports, African fans excited about the resumption of World Football Leagues. We start in the United States, where protests against racism and police brutality continue across the country. Protesters clashed with the police in different areas. In Seattle, police used flashbangs to disperse protesters. Media reports said some protesters threw umbrellas and objects at the police when they were asked to move. In Portland, police used tear gas to move protesters down the street. The protests have been going on for nearly 2 weeks now. They were sparked by the killing of George Floyd and an armed African-American man in police custody.
Well, in terms of their demands, it is a diverse movement. I think too many times we can treat it as a monolith, but it's not. There's competing voices within this movement. And I'll give you an example about the different perspectives. Some people, a tiny minority, but have in recent days, not today, but have sought confrontation with the police or attacking buildings. That is a minority, but it is a minority that exists. The majority oppose that. They don't want to see those clashes with the police. They don't want to see vandalism. They say those images actually do more damage to their cause. One of the common things you'll hear here is a slogan, defund the police. You'll hear many people talk about that. It seems to have come out of nowhere. Certainly, I wasn't aware of it before. And it's this idea many people are espousing here that the police is so corrupt, so racist, they say here, that you need to abolish the police and start again. Now, obviously, this is not a mainstream opinion here in the United States. Most people are broadly supportive of the police, but say, obviously, the police does need some change. In terms of what the politicians are doing, President Donald Trump, it's reported, wanted to send 10,000 soldiers onto the streets today to constrain these protests. In the end, what we saw is different type of policing, the police holding much back, always keeping a few blocks. You could tell that they were ready, but they were keeping a few blocks away. And we feel that that probably lowered tensions on both sides. When you have the protesters and the police face to face, provocations can occur, tempers can spiral out of control, and then clashes can begin. Now, the mayor of Washington, D.C. has been broadly supportive of these protests. This is Mayor Muriel Bowser. Now, she, in fact, had on this road we're standing on, painted in large letters, Black Lives Matter. And today, interestingly, the protesters criticized her for doing that and said it was performative, it was politically opportunistic. And they themselves painted over it with what? With the phrase, defund the police. Donald Trump has been uncharacteristically silent today. He tweeted out a few old tweets, but then tweeted towards the end of the day, law and order. And I think his position has been to try to ignore these protests. But with the biggest protest we've seen in 9 days, right on his doorstep, it's going to be hard for him to pretend that they're not here.
In Tunisia, human rights activists have been protesting over the death of the American black man, George Floyd.
The campaign started online in Tunisia and other African nations. People have gathered near the municipal theater in Tunis, calling for justice for George Floyd.
The video of the killing has shocked the world. Floyd was a black man. That's why he was killed.
The US calls for freedom and human rights and interferes in other countries, while its policemen kill their own citizens and disrespect international laws. The violence against peaceful protesters in the United States has aggravated the situation.
Students and human rights activists from sub-Saharan Africa have joined the protest movement, denouncing injustice in the United States.
The US pretends to be a democratic country, but unfortunately, racism and discrimination are the true face of the American society. It's sad that African Americans and other races are still facing injustice. This crime gives African nations the power to unite against these inhuman practices in the US.
A Tunisian journalist asserts that the ongoing crisis in the US has revealed a social crisis in the country.
The United States needs to improve its legislation and to train its security apparatuses on respecting the rights of citizens. Americans always raise human rights slogans abroad, while many vulnerable social classes are facing poverty, discrimination, and violence. The current U.S. administration has deepened the gap between the people and the state.
The U.S. Embassy in Tunis has released a communiqué saying the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis was a grave tragedy. The statement also said security forces around the world should be held accountable for their actions. Tunisian authorities have deployed hundreds of policemen and security officers in downtown Tunis to prevent protesters from reaching the U.S. Embassy in the north of the capital. Activists say they will return to the streets next week to denounce discrimination and violence against African Americans. Abdel Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
The French government says its military forces have killed Al-Qaeda's North Africa chief Abdelmalek Drukdel. The French army has been hunting Drukdel for more than 7 years during an operation in Mali. His death announcement comes almost 6 months after France and regional states combined their military forces to target terrorism in the Western Sahel. Drukdel was among North Africa's most experienced militants. He took part in an Islamist militant takeover of northern Mali before a French military intervention in 2013 drove them back and scattered fighters across the Sahel region. French Minister of the Armed Forces, Florence Parly, has announced that about 100 special forces from other European countries would be deployed to the area. The additional troops are to support French and African troops combating terrorism. Africa has recorded more than 183,000 coronavirus cases with more than 81,000 recoveries. Africa continues to record the lowest death toll globally. It currently stands at just over 5,000. Experts are warning that the continent's health systems could be overwhelmed as more nations ease restrictions to avoid economic collapse. Now, with just over 53,000 cases, Northern Africa has the highest number of infections on the continent. Egypt accounts for over half of these cases in the region. The International Monetary Fund has approved a $5.2 billion loan to the country. The one-year loan aims to help Egypt deal with the pandemic and its economic fallout. In West Africa, the Senegalese government is easing its night curfew. Intercity transport is also set to resume. This follows 2 days of protests against the coronavirus measures. Senegal has reported the third highest number of cases in the region. In East Africa, Sudan and Djibouti have recorded the highest number of cases in the region. Due to community transmission, Djibouti continues to witness a rise in cases. The country's Ministry of Health is conducting a mass screening campaign aiming to conduct tests up to 50,000 additional tests. In Central Africa, Cameroon has over 7,000 recorded cases. Despite a continued increase in the number of cases, the government has eased several measures. Schools and universities were reopened on June the 1st, while bars, restaurants and nightclubs have been allowed to operate after 6 p.m. Let's take a closer look at Southern Africa. South Africa has reported most of the cases in the region. Data from the Africa CDC shows the country has carried out over nearly 900,000 coronavirus tests. In Malawi, the country has seen an increase in cases. This comes as migrant workers started returning from South Africa earlier this week. Now, Sudan's first Vice President Riek Machar and his wife, Defense Minister Angelina Teny, are ready to return to office. Juba announced that both have recovered from COVID-19. Machar and his wife have been in self-isolation after testing positive for the coronavirus 3 weeks ago. The two tested negative for COVID-19 for a second time on Saturday. Let's get more now from our correspondent Patrick Oyet. He's live for us in Juba. So, Patrick, what more do we know about Riek Machar and his wife's recovery from the coronavirus? All right, I'm told we've unfortunately lost Patrick, but we'll try and reconnect with him. Let's head now to Beijing. Authorities have released a white paper titled Fighting COVID-19, China in Action. The document sets out the timelines and details of China's efforts to contain the virus. Dai Kai has We'll get more details of that later on. But China's Minister of Science and Technology says the country will share its COVID-19 vaccine with the rest of the world when it's ready and past clinical trials. Wang Jigang said international cooperation should be strengthened in vaccine development, clinical trials and application. He also said vaccine development should focus on ensuring safety, effectiveness and accessibility. China's white paper on the fight against COVID-19 says the country has approved 5 vaccines for clinical trials so far. You're watching Africa Live. Let's take our first break this hour. Coming up, German lawmakers criticize Trump's plans to pull troops from Germany. And Uganda hit by public transport shortage despite lifting of ban.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Nigeria is my home. 160 million vibrant, ambitious individuals constantly seeking the perfect self-expression. It is these people who inspired me to be that person that is seen, to be a voice that is heard, and ultimately to be the anchor that I am. I have to tap in, tune in, and turn on the very best qualities within me to deliver the news. I'm Richard Nta, an anchor for CGTN.
German lawmakers have criticized U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to withdraw as many as 9,500 American troops from Germany. The Wall Street Journal said a cap of 25,000 would be set on how many U.S. troops could be inside Germany at any one time, whether in permanent postings or temporary rotations. Experts say the move would significantly cut short America's commitment to European defense under the NATO umbrella. The withdrawal is the latest twist in the strained relations between Berlin and Washington. In Uganda, many have been stuck in cities due to a transportation shortage. They were hoping to travel to their rural homes after the government restarted public transport. But a number of taxi and bus operators have not completed a process to determine roadworthiness of their vehicles. Geopolitical Karibe reports from Kampala.
Hours of waiting for public transport after close to 3 months of lockdown. The bus and taxi parks in Uganda were crowded regardless of social distancing. The few vehicles around hiked fares, leaving passengers frustrated.
I've spent 2 days and nights here at the park. Transport fares have gone up. We don't have money.
Life is hard in the city after 3 months without work. I have no money, no food, and healthcare is expensive. Let me go to the village and dig.
The government reopened public transport but with strict regulations. Public transporters are to present documents of proof for their vehicles, driving licenses, and have their vehicles checked for roadworthiness. City authorities say many of them do not meet the requirements.
For example, you find circumstances where taxis have expired PSV and driving licenses. Then the owners do not have permanent employed drivers, yet the new registration requires details of the drivers of the vehicles.
All taxis and buses are also required to carry half their capacity to allow safe distancing. The government has waived off curfew hours and suspended the restrictions this weekend to allow more people travel up-country. But this condition does not apply to vehicles plying the city roads. Drivers, however, say the situation is complicating their operations and affecting their profits. All public transport vehicles are required to operate at half capacity.
This is going to affect us so much. Let them allow us carry 10 passengers instead of 7, since everyone is going to wear a mask.
Travel in the districts bordering the neighboring countries will remain suspended till end of June due to the rise in COVID-19 cases from cross-border movement. The government hopes the situation will get back to normal after all public service vehicles finalize registration this month. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN Kampala, Uganda.
Chinese efforts to fight COVID-19 have not only focused on the outbreak at home, but also abroad. Medical experts visited Sudan, for example, which is home to the highest number of patients in East Africa. CGTN's Hu Weiwei has this report from the capital, Khartoum.
A camping center for youth, now being transformed into a field hospital. It will provide testing, isolation, and treatment services for COVID-19 patients.
So the estimate capacity is around 300 to 400 beds. It will be just only for the mild and moderate cases. It will be equipped with ambulances.
This is one of the rooms that will accommodate patients with COVID-19. It's designed for 4 patients in this room. As we can see, 4 beds here, and we have fans, and also an air conditioner will be installed here. And this is the washroom. It's yet to be renovated and cleaned before it's being used. And this kind of rooms are for patients with mild symptoms. And for those with moderate symptoms, the patients will be moved to rooms with bigger space.
The complex will be divided with areas designated for specific uses.
Is a green area.
Yeah,
Green area where they can have office, they can have water, they can have tea. In the other side, we have 2 other doors. One entrance for people who are coming to this facility. Then the second building, they will have a kind of triage.
Here is the staff area,
Yes.
clean area.
Yeah.
So how about if they finish work, they finish daily shift, they want to come back? So what is the
accommodation for the staff?
We have the separate building with 3 floors in the opposite side, just around 1 kilometer around. So it will be the accommodation.
The transformation is expected to be completed within 1 week, and it will be the first field hospital dedicated to treating COVID-19 patients in Sudan. Hu Weiwei, CGTN, Khartoum.
All right, let's revisit that story on South Sudan's first Vice President Riek Machar and his wife, Defense Minister Angelina Teny. They are ready to return to office. Juba announced that both have recovered from COVID-19. Machar and his wife have been in self-isolation after testing positive for the coronavirus 3 weeks ago. The two tested negative for COVID-19 for a second time on Saturday. And now, fortunately, we have Patrick Oyet back live for us in Juba. Patrick, what more do we know now about Riek Machar and his wife's recovery from the coronavirus?
Yes, Peninah, as you correctly say that they have tested twice and the results of those tests came negative. That is what the Ministry of Health officials told us here. And they say that they are supposed to return now to office at any time they feel they are ready to do so. And this gives a lot of people here in South Sudan hope, because the previous rumors and theories about coronavirus is that once you get it, you die. Especially in this country, there have been a lot of rumors and theories, a lot of fear. That's why some people also were not ready to come out and declare their results, especially those who were found positive. There have also been cases where if tests are conducted and the health officials make announcement that out of the 100 tests, for example, we have found 50 members positive, people don't come to get the results anymore. They go hide in the public because people were stigmatizing those who are actually said to have been tested positive of COVID-19. So the first vice president and his wife, who is the Minister of Defense, coming now or the Ministry of Health officials saying they are now negative, gives hope to the people that yes, somebody can get the virus and still can also get out of it. Yeah.
Okay, so Patrick, at the time Machar tested positive for coronavirus, it was also announced that some members of the task force, as well as some of Machar's bodyguards had also tested positive. Any word on how they're doing now? The information the Ministry of Health is giving is not specific as this so-and-so is doing well, so-and-so is doing like this, but generally they are saying those who tested positive members of the task force are all in not bad condition. For example, we know one of the people who was in the task force is the Minister of Information, who is also positive, of course. He is in self-isolation. He is asymptomatic, meaning he is not showing any symptoms. He is okay and getting the treatment from home. Some members of his family have also been tested. Another person who is positive is also another vice president who, after Dr. Riek Machar tested positive, he took over the task force for coronavirus. Another vice president also. So 3 of the 5 vice presidents are positive, but the health officials are saying they are doing well. The bodyguards also, they are saying that of Riek Machar, the health officials are saying they are doing well. They are managing the situation. So far, the only death they have recorded in the country are 16. So they are saying, yes, the cases have become many, but still the situation is being managed well. Yeah. All right, so overall, Patrick, how is South Sudan faring in the battle against COVID-19? Because there were concerns earlier that the young nation would not be able to cope with a surge in coronavirus infections.
Yes, Peninah, I can say that it is looking fair, because the health ministry is facing challenges. Definitely, the health system in South Sudan is not really developed. The World Health Organization says it's one of the most underdeveloped. Facilities are really poor, and also the current health minister just came to office less than a month then the coronavirus pandemic.
All right, we've lost Patrick Oyed, but him just generally painting a picture for us of how South Sudan is battling COVID-19. Now, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has met the commander of the Libyan National Army, Khalifa Haftar. Haftar's ally and Speaker of Libya's Eastern Parliament, Aguila Saleh, was also at the meeting. On Saturday, they called for a ceasefire and introduced a new peace initiative for Libya. Here's Adel Mahri with the details.
Since April, division among political leaders in Libya's east has been evident. This week, Cairo has brought them together to accept a new vision for peace in Libya. The Cairo Accord moves in line with the previous Libyan agreements in Rome, Paris, Abu Dhabi and Berlin. It begins with a ceasefire on June 8th.
Marking this occasion, I'd like to call Libyans to fold the pages of the past. I urge all groups and political parties to take a step back and let's all as Libyan brothers deal with each other. Parties have different visions, but now we are about to build a Libyan state, an executive authority and a new constitution. When that happens, let them all compete.
The initiative sets specific political representation for Libya's regions in a new elected presidential council and cabinet. These bodies will lead a transitional roadmap for a maximum of 2 years, ending with general election. Cairo's meeting has also called for dismantling the militias and sending away foreign mercenaries.
Turkey's interferences increase the internal polarization. It is supplying the unconstitutional government of national accord with arms and mercenaries. This will also increase regional polarization, especially around Libya, as interests collide between nations involved in this conflict. This could elongate the crisis and disregard political paths.
While the eastern Libyan leaders were holding intensive meetings in Egypt this week, the head of the GNA was in Turkey. There, Faiz Sarraj has dismissed the possibility to stop his counter-military campaigns against the LNA forces.
We warn against the insistence of any party to continue seeking a military solution for the Libyan crisis. Egypt is closely monitoring the situation, and with its Libyan brothers, it's continuously following developments on the field. Egypt rejects all forms of escalation which will complicate the Libyan scene further. It also threatens terrible consequences in the region.
Egypt has managed to unite Eastern Libyan powers on a somewhat detailed vision for peace in the civil war-torn country. The first challenge for Cairo will be to maintain the ceasefire. The bigger step is to bring al-Sarraj on board an initiative created by his rivals. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Ras Sedr, Egypt.
You're watching Africa Live. Let's recap our top stories this hour. South Sudan's first Vice President Riek Machar and his wife, Defense Minister Angelina Teny, are ready to return to office. Juba announced that both have recovered from COVID-19. Machar and his wife have been in self-isolation at home after testing positive for the coronavirus 3 weeks ago. The two tested negative for COVID-19 for a second time on Saturday. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has met the Speaker of the Libyan Parliament, Aguila Saleh, and the Commander of the Libyan National Army, Khalifa Haftar. They called for a ceasefire starting Monday and introduced a new vision for peace in Libya. In the United States, protests against racism and police brutality continue across the country. In Seattle, police used flashbangs to disperse protesters. Media reports said some protesters threw umbrellas and objects at the police when they were asked to move. In Portland, police used tear gas to move protesters down a street. Protests have been going on for nearly 2 weeks now. It was sparked by the death of George Floyd, an unarmed African American, while he was in police custody. And Chinese authorities have released a white paper titled Fighting COVID-19, China in Action. The document sets out the timelines and details of China's efforts to contain the virus. The white paper describes how unprecedented measures were taken to cope with the unprecedented crisis. The white paper says as of end of May, over 160 billion yuan had been allocated by governments of all levels, equal to nearly $23 billion US. And that's a look at some of our top stories. Coming up in business news, as WFP warns of acute hunger crisis, we'll look at the impact of COVID-19 on food security in Africa. And beauty and restaurant businesses in South Africa cry foul over continued closure.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home, and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines.
You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The beauty and restaurant industries in South Africa are lobbying to be able to open their doors to customers again. 8 million South Africans are allowed to work, go to religious services, buy alcohol and exercise freely as lockdown is slowly phased out. But personal grooming and eating out are still banned. It comes amid a court ruling that declared level 3 restrictions unconstitutional and invalid. CGTN's Julie Shire has more.
Here it is, a small Johannesburg hairdresser, usually buzzing with clients, has been shut for over 2 months. It's had no government help and bills are piling up as the lockdown drags on.
We applied for relief and we were rejected. It's extremely bad for our staff. We were trying to help them in terms of, food for the past 2 months. If we go beyond 4 months, it's going to be extremely difficult for us. We're going to have to go and maybe apply for a loan to pay the rent, and then we will have to make arrangements and take it from there.
Government widened the economy, allowing millions of South Africans to go back to work under level 3. Salons have not made the cut, but are preparing to open.
I've disinfected the salon already. I've got the sanitizers. I've got a thermometer to screen clients. At each workstation, I've got the shield mask. And on the floor, we have the 1.5 meter social distance where the clients will sit. If you look at the taxi industry, they sit so close to each other in the taxis. Why can the hair salons and the beauty industries not open up?
Once busy restaurants now also stand empty. La Boqueria's downsized kitchen staff prepare takeaway meals. Alcohol is also back on sale, but it won't be enough to curb mounting losses.
We jumped at the opportunity to do some takeaways purely because it gave some staff, albeit only 5 or 8% of the staff that were there, an opportunity to do something, because after 5 weeks of lockdown, you become quite desperate.
Government is reviewing a proposal to allow dine-ins under level 3 laws, which have been deemed unconstitutional and invalid by a court.
We can easily, in this place, accommodate 120 people and make sure they're socially distanced. So the legislation makes no sense to us. We will make sure our customers feel safe. We will make sure that our customers aren't compromised. We will make sure that the controls at ablution facilities, we will give the customers the option to re-sanitize anything that they get from us that they're not comfortable with.
Both these industries are on their knees as a result of the prolonged lockdown. If regulations aren't changed soon, many smaller businesses may not be able to open their doors ever again. Julie Shire, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted how we live, learn and work. Many around the world are still under some form of stay-at-home order. Usiku Games, a mobile game studio in Kenya, has created the first ever teleconferencing system in Africa to support those studying or working from home. CGTN's Nick Mudimba tells us more.
In the heart of Kenya's capital city, Nairobi, we meet Jay Shapiro, the founder of Usiku Games, who has boldly taken Zoom and Skype head-on by creating Gumzo, which means chatting in Swahili, the first ever teleconferencing system in Africa.
When COVID hit, we realized that people are suffering through anxiety, loneliness, separation. And so for the first time, people across Africa are turning to video conferencing, using tools like Zoom, WebEx, Skype, that sort of thing. And we realized that there's some really fundamental problems with those tools. And so we decided to create a better one.
For Gumzo, all you need is a phone number which is validated through SMS. This means that every person who was on the Gumzo communication platform has a validated phone number to avoid problems like Zoom bombing.
With us, in order to come into a room, you have to knock to get into the room. The host can see your live video face, your name, your phone number, and can decide whether or not to let you in.
Gumzo's founders also had the education sector in mind when they created the platform. The system can take an unlimited number of users and has a user-friendly interface. The service is free for users and costs $1 per week for those who want to host their own meetings, with 50% of the proceeds going to the COVID-19 kitty.
We can support hundreds of users within our platform, but we've also built in the ability to do YouTube live streaming. So you could have a small room with just your 50 favorite friends or VIPs, have a chat with them, and then have an audience of thousands or millions on YouTube.
For other users who shifted from Zoom and Skype, the latest innovation is also a recipe of belief and hope.
The quality of video and the quality of sound is very, very good. This is because I'm made to understand that the server sits in Kenya and also sit in SA. And the company is also planning to have more servers around Africa. So that makes it very easy in terms of low latency when it comes to quality of sound and the quality of video. This is African solution, and we've beaten people with other solutions before.
But as much as the system offers a user-friendly platform to its customers, there's also the aspect of celebrating good as a societal bigger picture during this COVID-19 pandemic.
There's literally hundreds of millions of dollars leaving the continent to go to platforms like Zoom at a time when we need that money here in the local economies. And so by creating a local platform, the money stays in Africa and helps to facilitate regenerative growth and creating jobs.
It is the first video conferencing system made in Africa. I know they used to Zoom, they used to Skype, but Gumzo has come with a wake of relief. Remember, the servers are right here in Kenya, meaning you're assured of quality, you're assured of consistency, and of course the latency is also something to actually admire. Nick Mudimba, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
To relieve stress and anxiety brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic, many resorted to drinking alcohol. While it may offer temporary relief, too much alcohol can cause major health problems. And as life gets back to normal in Wuhan, China, many admit they may have had too much during the citywide lockdown. CGTN's Zhao Yunfei speaks to them and a health expert about drinking too much.
Wuhan residents finally feel a sense of relief as the COVID-19 pandemic fades. Many recollect how much they were affected by the months-long city lockdown. Some even admit that they may have drunk too much.
Us brothers have come out to drink every day. So far, this is the best way to forget stress.
At home, I drank liquor and beer combined. I lost my job during the epidemic. I have no more income. I need some alcohol to make me feel better.
People had to stay indoors the whole time during the epidemic. Can you imagine how frustrating that was? Now it might be nice to have a drink and relax.
Wuhan has been encouraging street dining to stimulate night economy. When it comes to family and friends reunions, wines and beers are necessities. But it could be troublesome if you get addicted.
Alcohol addiction expert Wang Gang says he has seen some drinking habit change during the epidemic. Many who were social drinkers before 2020 drank along during the epidemic. Dr. Wang says this may cause alcoholic abuse.
Many people lost income during the epidemic. A lot of them dealt with fear and pressure and suffered from anxiety, depression. Others felt irritable. People found that consuming alcohol can temporarily solve their problems.
Dr. Wang says overconsumption cannot improve mood, but instead may bring on depression.
If you find that you can't stop drinking or have acted irresponsibly, then you might be addicted. I would advise you not to drink at all.
Dr. Wang says now this is the perfect time to reshape daily routines as people get ready to get back to their normal lives. Zhao Yunfei, CGTN, Wuhan, Hubei Province.
Multiple aid agencies, including the World Food Programme, have warned that millions across Africa could struggle to feed themselves due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Kenya, like many other African countries, has instituted coronavirus lockdown measures. CGTN's Nick Mudimba took a closer look at how these measures have affected the country's food supply chain.
Farmers across the continent have been hard hit in recent months by flooding, locust infestation, and now the coronavirus pandemic. For Africa's estimated 33 million smallholder farmers, these are difficult times. John Muturi Njoroge is a small-scale farmer in a part of Kenya that has good soil and enjoys plenty of rain. He is helped by his mother and brothers to cultivate the land. They earn their living by selling some of their produce, but the pandemic has adversely affected their lives and livelihoods.
My farming has really gone down due to COVID-19 because we are not selling anything. Many customers are stuck at home due to the lockdowns. There is no money, and when we sell our products, we sell them at very low prices.
Nathaniel Peterson is the vice president of Busara, a research and advisory firm dedicated to advancing and applying behavioral science. He is also an advisor to the World Food Programme. He is hopeful of better days ahead for many farmers.
I think WFP and some of these other major international organizations are thinking really well about how they can transport food and encourage farmers to produce. I think the one problem we have now is that everyone knows that agriculture production is really important right now. And a lot of people are telling farmers different types of information that may compete with each other. It may actually increase their uncertainty. And what we know in behavioral economics is that when people feel uncertain, sometimes they can kind of recoil a bit.
A visit to one of Kenya's biggest food markets in the capital Nairobi shows that it's teeming with quality and bountiful produce, but the prices here have worried traders and farmers alike.
Now, as you can see behind me, it's a beehive of activity in this market. Yes, the shoppers, the clients are not here, but the vendors are complaining of lack of traffic, meaning the prices have actually gone really down, and they're hoping soon that things will be back to normal.
At the moment, people are afraid of coming to the market. It depends on the numbers of virus patients that they hear about. Mostly, they buy their products near their homes and don't come here.
Farmers have been largely left to fend for themselves during these tough times.
At the moment, I am doing everything by myself. I have to look for seeds, fertilizers, so when I sell the little that I have, I need to prioritize all those, including feeding my family.
It's a big farm John and his family are cultivating, as you can see, and the motive is to put food on the table. It hasn't been an easy ride since COVID-19 knocked in sub-Saharan Africa, and farmers like him are now putting heads together with the family for one motive: to put food on the table. They have to be very creative also in the markets because the prices are actually down, and also the fact that the products are lying idle after harvesting. Nick Mudimba, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Coming up in sports. African fans excited about the resumption of World Football Leagues.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Peninah, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are two of the major cities I grew up in.
Business in Africa is
After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.